Hi, I have been using LVGL and Squareline Studio for a while, and I am hooked how versatile and easy they are for my projects. They let you create professional and fancy interfaces with minimal effort. Since there were requests for a tutorial, I'll show you how I use them so you can easily create great graphical user interfaces for your projects too. My first project using them was on an e-ink display, and I was able to achieve what I wanted quite easily. But after using them for a while, I realized they truly shine on LCDs with touchscreens. So in another project of mine, a smart bottle, I used them for a graphical interface, and I think it worked out great. At the very least, I achieved what I wanted. Today, I have a bigger display, an HMI display with touch. Compared to my previous project, it has a higher resolution and it is called Crop Panel Advanced 7-inch HMI display. I'll put a link down in the description if you want to follow this tutorial step by step. But you don't need this exact display since LVGL lets you to port your code to different platforms fairly easy. Let's take a quick look at it first. It features an ESP-S3 16MB MCU as its core. So you have plenty of memory for your programs. On the bottom left, there is a microphone with op-amp circuitry, an SD card slot, and a speaker connector. On the top right, there is a slot for adding extra module, like a LoRa module, which is pretty cool I think. I already have a few ideas I want to try, but let's focus on LVGL and Squareline Studio today. The first step is finding a proper LVGL port or starter, whatever you want to call it. For example, I found a random LVGL port online and it behaves a little weird. I don't recommend starting development before you find the proper port or make it yourself. Here is another port I made after fixing some existing issues. Now it works fine and no longer has the flickering problem. It just displays a label, but it's a good starting point. I'll put the code in the description so you can download it if you'd like. For projects larger than simple ones, I definitely recommend using Platform.io extension for Visual Studio Code. All you have to do after downloading my code is open the folder, and that's about it. If you want to compile the code and upload it to your port, all you have to do is go to here, which says Platform.io upload, and it will download all the necessary toolchains, libraries, and etc. Afterwards, it will just compile it for you. To get Squareline Studio, just visit their website and click download and select the operating system that you have. The installation process is pretty straightforward, so no special instructions are needed. Squareline Studio offers 30-day free trial, which is plenty for our projects. However, if you plan to use it professionally, purchasing a license is worth it just for the time it saves. This is the first screen that welcomes you. You can of course try their examples to explore its capabilities, but I will jump straight into creating a project. First, I click the Create button and then Arduino, since I'm going to use the Arduino platform. You need to know the specifications of your display, of course. The resolution of mine is 800 to 480 and the shape is rectangle. It supports circle displays as well, and it has 16-bit color depth. My LVGL port is 8.3.11. Afterwards, click the Create button. Let's integrate this with our code. First, go to File on the left and then select the project settings. After clicking that, you will see this screen. In here, go to UI Files Export Path. This is the location of the folder for your design. And here in my code, go to Source and UI folder and select that one. For starters, just grab something from the left panel. It doesn't matter what it is, just something that can display on the screen is fine. Then click Export, Export UI Files. We also need to do some small modifications in our code. First, we need to remove the slashes in front of the include of the UI/UI.h in the main point CPP and comment out the section which is basically creating a label, and remove the brackets in front of the UI init function. Then you can upload your code the usual way. If you did everything correctly, you should see the same interface on your display as you designed in Squareline Studio. Let's do something more interesting. In Squareline Studio, components are called widgets. You can find the most commonly used one on the left side of the interface. These widgets include things like buttons, labels, sliders, and more, which you can drag and drop onto your design canvas. Each widget has properties that you can configure to fit your design requirements. You can also include images, and to do that, you need to click this image button and then add file into assets and select the image file that you want to include in your canvas. Then select the image and go to the right side and select the asset type that you just added into your assets. If you want to change a property of the widgets, you need to go to the right side and play with the style settings. And for example, you can set things like arc width or other stuff, depending on the widget type that you placed in. And when you are done or want to try, you need to click again export and export UI files and then compile it again. This is the most basic workflow. Afterwards, you will get the same result as you have seen on your computer screen. You can assign functions, change properties, and customize the user interface elements directly within the Squareline Studio. And the best part is, you can do most of the interface related configurations without even writing any code. It's all great, but there is one thing I'd like to mention. Avoid relying too much on the images. You should try to use built-in styling options as much as possible. The main reason is that most of these boards have limited resources, both RAM and memory, and the graphics can quickly consume them. Additionally, without a clear project in mind, you may not see the full potential of LVGL and Squareline Studio, so let's work on a project together. I recently bought a camera from Blackmagic to improve the quality of the content on my channel, and so far I really like it. The camera has Bluetooth, but there is no official app to control its settings. I want to create a Bluetooth device to control the camera and avoid relying on third-party paid apps. I also really like the camera's settings menu. It is simple to use but looks very professional. I'd like to replicate that same look. I think this is a great use case for LVGL and Squareline Studio. To identify the colors used on the camera, I downloaded the user manual from the official website. I want to use the exact colors as much as possible to achieve a similar look and feel. This will also make it easier for others to use, as they will recognize the familiar appearance and the menu structure. I pasted the screenshot into GIMP, a free image editing software. It has a tool called Color Picker that allows you to extract color codes from the images, and I will use that to get the exact colors. For styling your design, you will spend most of your time in the right panel. Simply select the component you want to style and configure it as you like. Let's start with the background color of the main screen. In this screen, everything you see is a button. As you can see, the top buttons are aligned with each other, and the buttons on the bottom of the screen are also aligned with one another. We can easily achieve this alignment as well. The easiest way to achieve this is by using a panel widget. They are really great for this purpose. Let's add one to the screen and position it at the top part of the screen. Using the built-in aligning functions is always still a great idea. It will save you a lot of frustrations for later on. Let's add a button widget from the left. And using the hierarchy panel, we can drag and drop it inside of the panel. I will grab the color of the background of the panel in the user manual. And if you take a look at the styling of the buttons on the user manual, they don't have any radius around them. I want to achieve the same look as well. We can do that under the styling options, which is called background radius. I will change it to 0, and let's match the color as well. Again, I just copied the color from the user manual. Let's go to the next trick. If you go and select the panel from the hierarchy panel, you can adjust the alignment of components within a panel using the layout option. And change no layout to flex, and it will put the components in its place. Then you can just press Ctrl D and it will put the next button right next to it. This is really a nice way to align the components on your user interface. After you are satisfied with the shape and color, all you have to do is just pressing Ctrl D a couple of times to create more buttons. I am going to press it around like 6 times to get the similar number of the buttons, which is also in the user manual as well. There is a small place here that is also a button, so I'm going to use that space for that. And the good part is you can always do Ctrl Z and do the similar things again, because it is the usual design process. And I'm going to change the color of the second one to black as well, because it is how it is in the camera as well, and duplicate them again. And we need a few labels. I am clicking the label button and it created a label here, but I want them inside of the button. So again, I'm just dragging and dropping it inside of the button. And it is right now not inside of the button because it's staying outside of the canvas. The easiest way to fix that is going to the transform tab and just deleting the X and Y positions, and it will place it right in the middle of the button. And of course you can change the text of the label from here. Of course I can again do the Ctrl D trick and multiply the buttons. This way labels in the button will also be duplicated. And you should always try to name your buttons and labels because it will make the programming way easier later on. Otherwise you will spend lots of time to figure out which button is which. This is also true for the other components as well. Just name them. If you want to change the font of the text, you can do it from here. I will go with something bigger. Well, maybe not this big. You can also create custom fonts. To do that, it's more or less similar to what you do with the picture. But since the fonts of the camera are really similar to built-in fonts, I'm just gonna go with the standard fonts instead. If you take a look at the top right, there is something like 3 sliders. I assume that is like a picture or something. Probably it has no meaning or whatever. But I want it to have some meaning, and I don't know what it is. Maybe I can figure it out later on. Anyway, for that I'm going to use the slider instead of an image. And I made one and resized it. And I will also create another panel and drag that one inside of that panel as well. Duplicate those. I will make 3 of them, which will be similar as in the camera. After coloring them, I will again drag and drop this panel inside of the top panel. So it will place it to its right location. I try to spend as little time as possible to align the components because it is really frustrating. This is way better workflow. We have been working on this for a while, and let's do a quick export and see how it looks on the LCD. I think it is looking pretty nice. And the colors look very similar to those on the camera, even though this display has a lower resolution. Maybe I can give a little bit more functions on these sliders. I don't know, maybe they can just stay. They look fine, I guess. If we take a look at again to the snapshot of the user manual, this area seems like another panel, and this is just a label, it's no function. And also we have another panel down here as well. And we have 4 dots on the bottom which shows in which screen that we are in. You change the screen pressing by these arrow-like buttons. As your design goes a little bit more complicated, always try to name your panels or any other components as much as possible, otherwise things will get quite messy afterwards. It is more or less the same thing which we have done on the top panel as well. It's mostly picking the colors from the user manual and making it similar in our canvas. I would like to mention about something called wrap under the flex flow. It automatically places the next item you add under your panel in the next row, so you don't have to manually position each component. In this case, it makes sense to enable this option, so you can duplicate the buttons and they will be placed as you want it to be. The next step is refining the tiny details. Small details usually take more time than the bigger ones, so I will fast forward this part. Another benefit with working with the panels is you can just copy entire panels if you have a similar interface. This will save you a lot of time. Then of course you need to do the minor details, but that's okay, an easy thing to do. If you need custom fonts and icons, there is a great website called Google Fonts. It does not only provide fonts for you, but also icons. These right and left arrows looks really similar, so I'm gonna just grab those. You can give them a custom size and download the PNG files. To use them as button, I added 2 image buttons and I'll add them to the assets in the Squareline Studio. And this is how it looks on the screen. So far, I really liked how it looks like. Of course, there is no functionality built in, so let's add a bit more functionality to it. Second page of the record setting contains these options, so let's imitate those as well. You can not only duplicate the panels, but also entire screen as well. Select the screen from the left top and again click Ctrl D. Now we have our second screen. All your styling options will be copied, then all you need to do is customize the screen that you have created. Okay, I finished the second screen as well, so let's add a function to this right button, and when someone presses it, it goes to the second panel here. To add some events, or functions in this case, I am going to select this button over here and scroll down to the right panel and click Events button. In here, you can configure the events or how your screen should behave. As a trigger, I select Clicked, and as an action, I select Change Screen, and I want it to go to the second screen if someone presses that button. You can also add animations if you want, but in the camera, they didn't add any animation because those things take some time. And in professional machines, you don't want to add any animation or anything. Let's add the same function to the left button on the second screen so it can go to the screen 1. My trigger is again clicked and the action is change screen. And then I will add that function to here as well, and it will just go to the first screen that we created. Okay, let's test if this thing works. I uploaded the code again, so let's test it. If I press the right button, screen will change, and if I press the left button, it goes to the first screen. You don't need to write any code for this kind of functionality. And I recommend using this built-in functionality from Squareline Studio instead of writing them on your own. It will save you quite a lot of time, plus your code will be more tidy. But as you can imagine, just manually doing things or styling things is really time consuming. If you have 1 or 2 screens, this workflow is pretty fine, but if you are working on a bigger project, this is not really an easy way to do things. So let's do things a little bit more smarter. A better approach is to use global styles and widget states. As you can see, all the buttons here follow a fixed color style and only changing when they selected or interacted with, and their behavior remains consistent. After experimenting with your design and finalizing a theme and styling, you can create different components with custom styles and tell LVGL to use your new styling instead of the default one. This approach saves a massive amount of time, and I think the only feasible way to work on larger projects. In this interface, I can see that the buttons has 3 main states: checked, default, and disabled. I have applied different styling to each of these states. Since my color scheme won't change much later on, I want to set this new styling as the default. This way, I won't have to manually adjust the colors and styles later. Because for example, the default checked state has a red background, and it is not matching to our design. So to solve this, I created 6 new styles, 3 for the buttons, and also 3 for the text. And in my style init function, I am telling the LVGL to what my style is, both the colors and the styles, etc. And I did not wrote this code manually at all. I just select 3 buttons which had the styling that I wanted. I selected the lines that define the styling for the selected component and copied them. Pasted that styling to my new styling that I just created, and I changed the object set style to object style set. So instead of setting an object styling, it styles everything. Once that's done, we can remove entire stylings from the Squareline Studio and continue our user interface without worrying about colors, border styles, and etc. And right now I removed entire stylings from the Squareline Studio and I am just giving them button states. Currently, it is using the standard theme, but in the device, it will be looking like as we want it them to be. So that way, you don't have to worry about the styling and other colors. You can just focus on the design that you want to achieve and spend less time on the styling and more time on the functionality of your design. After exporting it, as you can see, if we do that, there won't be any styling options under the buttons or any other widgets that you put on your design, even though it will look like as you want it to be. Let's test it if this thing will work after uploading the code and the board. As you can see, even though we used standard widgets without any styling in the Squareline Studio, we still achieved the desired look. This approach is especially helpful when working on multiple screens. I wish Squareline Studio had a built-in feature for this. They do have something called components, but it's not exactly the same. I also have one last time-saving tip for you, which is particularly useful for larger projects. You have several options to manage a large design. However, if you are working on multiple screens, your Squareline Studio project can become massive and difficult to manage. For example, if I continue this project by simply copying the screens and creating a new one, I could end up with 16 extra screens. That's why it can be useful to use container widget to manage all those screens. Instead of creating a new screen, you can place your panels underneath it. Instead of changing the screens, you can change the flag of the screen to make it hidden, then scroll with your new containers instead of the screen. It will make your Squareline Studio way tidier. Oh, I forgot to mention, you can also simulate the behavior within the Squareline Studio if you want. This is useful after you created some events, as it allows you to test changes without having to upload your code each time you make an adjustment. Once your screens are created and you are happy with the design, you can start adding events to your user interface. You can handle almost all user interface related events directly within Squareline Studio, and you can also add custom function holders to your interface for later configuration. I believe adding as many events as possible from Squareline Studio is a great option here. I'll add some events to these screens now and make them function the way the camera does. Being able to do this without coding is really convenient because you can see the results instantly. After adding a few events, it's a good idea to check them in the simulation. This way, you can easily see if you are missed anything or something isn't working as you expected it. After adding all these events, it behaves almost like the camera itself. I even started wondering if Blackmagic used LVGL to design their menu. So far, I am happy with how it turned out. Of course, this project isn't completed yet, as it's just a design for now. I still need to add Bluetooth functionality. Since the project isn't finished, I won't release the code yet because I don't like sharing incomplete work with no practical purpose. Also, I don't know yet what the Blackmagic API allows me to control on the camera, so it doesn't make sense to continue working on the user interface without that information. But if you think this would be a useful project for you as well, let me know in the comments and I'll finish it so you can use it too. I have this idea of adding a LoRa module to the screen as it has a slot for it. The benefit would be that you can control your second camera from a really long distance. Several kilometers even. So I'd really like to hear from the people who would find this a useful project to invest time in. This could be useful for amateur filmmakers or people who create videos for real estate, as they wouldn't need a second person to control the camera. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you like this video, like always, don't forget to give a thumbs up and see you next time.